The agenda is sponsored by Newcastle County Government.
You may think the average minimum wage earner is a teenager flipping burgers. However, in Delaware, it's a 35-year-old single mother of color. More than 25% of minimum wage earners have children. In fact, 40% of single working parents are forced to support their families on these low wages. Hi, I'm Kerwin Gaines. Welcome to The Agenda. As Senate Bill 15 goes into effect, raising the minimum wage from $9.25 an hour to $15 an hour in 2025, many are curious how this will influence their jobs, businesses, and communities. Bill sponsor Jack Walsh believes that the increase will benefit Delawareans across all three counties. Senator Walsh, thank you for joining us today on The Agenda.
Thank you, Kerwin. Thank you for having me here today. Appreciate it.
What was it that made, I would say, the generator in your life that made this happen, that said, I need to take a stand with this and ensure that the minimum wage is increased?
This is something that's very near and dear to my heart since I've been in the Senate. We've actually worked on minimum wage several times. We've raised the minimum wage in 2018. We've raised the minimum wage from $8.25 to $9.25. We then attempted a $15 minimum wage again in 2018. The bill was filed. We got it out of committee, but we just ran out of time that year. Then last year, the COVID pandemic hit, so it wasn't the time to run that piece of legislation that year. So after the election in November, I got with my colleagues and several people and decided that this is the time. This is the year where people need the most help. And it's a living, breathing document. And at the end of the day, it's very simplistic. It raises the minimum wage to $15 an hour by 2025.
So when I'm thinking of minimum wage, I'm thinking of, the first thing that comes to my mind is poverty. I think of housing, I think of children, I think of food, right? So some of the necessities to make it through life. I make X amount of dollars as for my minimum wage. Can that take care of the gallon of milk that I need for my kids for 5 or 6 days? So the minimum wage is going to help with that. How does that fall in line with other state assistance and all these other things that are going on?
The minimum wage right now, you cannot live in a one-bedroom apartment right now on $9.25 an hour. So this will help people get off state assistance eventually. There's about 35,000 people right now in the state of Delaware that make minimum wage, $9.25. There's about 53,000 people that make $10 an hour or less. So this will help those people have a better standard of life. So this will definitely help people put food on the table, help them pay their bills, and help them to move forward to achieve the American dream. That's virtually impossible right now with how we've set the minimum wage standard.
The national minimum wage was first implemented in 1938 as a response to the growing blue-collar workforce at the start of World War II. It was designed to create a minimum standard of living as a way to protect workers from exploitation by their employers. As the cost of living has steadily increased across the country, the discrepancy between many individuals' wages and expenses have continued to put pressure on workers and their families. Some legislators, like Representative Jeffrey Spiegelman, who voted no on Senate Bill 15, took issue with the speed at which the increase is happening.
Let me first start by saying I do believe there should be a minimum wage. I believe that this bill, though, took it up too fast. It just took it too quickly. And I also believe that it really hurts small businesses, especially those coming out the other end of the pandemic, to all of a sudden turn around and say, oh yeah, by the way, you're just coming out of a year of pandemic, and over the next 4 years, you're going to have to increase your labor costs. The speed at which we were doing the $15 minimum wage was one of my bigger concerns. If you were to spread it out further, I'd be more comfortable, but we're doing this pretty quickly. I mean, every year over the next 4 years, you're going to see a substantial increase. I would like a delay for small businesses to allow small businesses to better recover before facing the hit of increased labor costs. That amendment was struck down. Everything we did or tried to do to put parameters around the bill were struck down with the phrase simply, we have the votes.
Not everyone's excited about this.
Correct.
Okay. And in politics, it's always going to be the case, right? No one's ever going to be 100% happy. What would you tell the employer that's scared right now? The mom and pop shop that thinks, I'm not Target. I just can't afford to pay these people this wage. What would you tell them to ease their minds?
Well, I would tell them that the sky is not falling. You're going to be okay, right? You're going to have to do what you need to do as a business person to make things work. And we've done that in the past. We've done it 2 years ago when we increased the wage from $8.25 to $9.25. So this is an incremental increase. And as your competition also has to do the same thing. So your competition has to increase their wages as well. So it levels the playing field for everyone. So I don't see, like I said, I don't see the correlation into raising wages as far as putting people out of business. Rent increases, product increases, there's price increases on everything, but we never talk about businesses going out of business when the commodities increase, so to speak. We only talk about people going out of business when the labor rate increases. So I will say that businesses will be fine. Business people are business people. They will survive. They will figure out a way to make this work.
So I would call this margin fear, right? These are folks worried about their margin and whether or not it's just going to be enough.
That's correct. In the business community, and I myself am in the business community, it's all about margins. So maybe your margin might be a little less, but it's all about fairness. It's all about taking care of people. It's all about taking care of employees, taking care of your employees. I believe most businesses do that. Of course, some don't. But I believe those that do and have a solid business model will have no problem surviving.
Okay. They will adapt and overcome.
They will adapt and overcome for sure, without a doubt. And it's been proven they have. Other states have done this. We have not seen business closures or things of that nature. All businesses close, no matter what the labor rate is. It happens. Some businesses have a bad business model. Whatever that may be, businesses close and open every day. So it has nothing to do with the labor rate. It's just the world of business.
Now, the magic word over the past 2 weeks from the federal standpoint and from the state standpoint has been inflation. We also have a president that made it very clear to employers recently that in the current employment crisis we're having post-COVID, as far as filling positions that are lost, he's made it very clear, pay them more. That being said, I fear inflation, and so do several other business owners. How does that correlate with the increase in minimum wage?
And from 1974 to 1991, there was, on the national level, there was an increase of the minimum wage 8 times. We've never seen inflation in that period. In the state of Delaware, the last 4 increases in the minimum wage that we've had in the state, we've never seen inflation rear its head in the state of Delaware the last 4 times that we've increased the minimum wage. So every time we talk about the minimum wage, we always hear that the proverbial sky is falling scenario. And it's simply not true. We've not seen that. We've seen unemployment remain stable or grow. Employment, I should say, remain stable or grow. The GDP has remained stable, but have not seen any data that indicates that there'll be inflation will increase due to the minimum wage increase.
So, is the minimum wage a living wage? Using MIT's living wage calculator, which factors in expenses such as groceries, housing, healthcare, among other things, Delaware's current livable wage for a single household is $15.32 an hour. That number more than doubles if the earner has a child to support.
a living wage is not supposed to be minimum wage, and a minimum wage is not supposed to be living wage. Those are two different things. A minimum wage is supposed to be an emergency measure. In other words, you're only supposed to be working minimum wage under certain circumstances until you work your way out of minimum wage. That was the point of minimum wage. A living wage, where you are living and existing, is a different argument, and betwixt the two should not meet.
Another barrier to raising the minimum wage is the often cited objection that an increased minimum wage will actually hurt those working at low-paying jobs. Companies forced to pay more in wages will either automate and replace workers with machines or shut their doors entirely. And automation, replacing human workers, is no longer a concern for the distant future. The technology is being implemented at a rapid pace.
You're not going to stop automation. You're simply not going to stop it. You will slow it. And especially for small businesses, that tends to be important. McDonald's, for example, other fast food companies, I don't mean to pick on McDonald's in particular, but McDonald's and similar fast food companies, they have the clout, the capital to begin replacing people. They already have. Those of you who have gone to McDonald's recently and ordered off of a touchscreen instead of talking to somebody. That's automation. That replaced workers. So now McDonald's next step is to say, well, if we have to pay people $15 a minimum wage, then we will start to replace line cooks. Those are the next people to be replaced. Amazon and other large packaging, warehousing companies, because all we talk about Amazon's a warehouse company, a warehouse shipping company. They are replacing warehouse workers with automated forklifts, with automated warehousing, because they can turn around and say, hey, look, we're paying our workers $15 minimum wage or more. But the truth behind that statement is, in order to pay that worker $15 minimum wage or more, they fired 2 other workers and are making more money doing it. And so these things are coming. My point is, you have to be careful doing this. If you rush into the $15 minimum wage, as we have, you have, of course, created the exponential environment to replace these jobs.
There were few industries that were more impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic than restaurants. Carrie Leishman, head of the Delaware Restaurant Association, sees the increase in minimum wage as another obstacle for the service industry to deal with.
First of all, a lot is going on, obviously, for restaurants. We were the most negatively affected, and our workforce, during the pandemic in the last year and a half. So we are on the road to recovery. Certainly, this piece of legislation was something that the Delaware restaurant industry opposed, not because we don't believe in bigger and more wages for individuals, but because of how it was rolled out and the time frame it's rolled out. We had asked for, during the legislation process, we had asked for an extension of the rollout and the phase-in of the $15 an hour. You know, we're only one of 8 states in the country to roll out $15 an hour, but we are the only state that is doing it in less than 6 years. So that was something that we had asked the legislature to just extend it a little longer, because there's been no precedent in enacting legislation of this kind against small business in a time of COVID.
So is it really against small business, or is it just helping people that, as you're saying, in the time of COVID, folks have had a very hard time making ends meet, and they were prior to COVID. Poverty isn't anything new here in the state of Delaware, and we've gone over the numbers with Senator Walsh as well. So rolling this out, and I understand everything needs to be done in stages, but can Delaware wait in stages for this funding?
I think it's important to note the landscape of what was happening around this legislation. It wasn't about what was put in the past, what was introduced 5 years ago or before. It's really what was happening now. And now I can tell you that our industry was so negatively affected, we lost in the restaurant industry more of our workforce than all but 3 states in the country. 2/3 of restaurant workers were on unemployment. So it wasn't even an issue of $9.25 or $15 an hour. They were making 0. So we were asking for a little bit more time to bring people back and to be able to recover what the restaurant industry had lost. In a good year, restaurants' profit margins are less than 5%. And I can answer questions for different businesses or other small businesses, the furniture store, the liquor store, grocery stores. All I can say are restaurants were affected deeply. I think where we're going to see the questions with the legislation is when year 3 and 4, where we get closer to that $15 an hour wage threshold, you're going to see the wage pressure on those upper levels. So you're going to see those line cooks making $16, $17 an hour, now wanting 18 to 20. So it really does push everybody up. And I mean, there's just no denying that that's going to happen. As a skilled worker making $18 an hour, they're going to want more as that minimum wage goes to $15 an hour. And then when workers come back to work, right, when this crisis eases a little bit, I think we're going to see some of that pressure as well on the business owner.
We ventured out to one Wilmington business, the comic book shop, to find out how one business owner is reacting to Senate Bill 15. We are here at the comic book shop here in Wilmington, Delaware. Awesome shop, and we are talking about minimum wage, which you are passionate about. I love your passion, and I love the sentiment, and it makes a lot of sense. Please tell us a little bit more about it.
People are worth it. I think part of what's always guided us is to have, people that are working for you are kind of your family, and the better you can take care of the people that are working for you, the better they'll be able to work for you. We've seen that the more we can give back to our employees, the happier they are working, and the better service they provide, which makes people happier and want to come here more. So it's all this like vicious cycle of positivity.
Well, I'm not against positivity at all, but let me tell you, some business owners say that this bill, it's not rolling out properly, right?
Okay.
It could have been a slower rollout, not so much, could have been delivered. I'll give you my opinion, but what's your opinion?
Well, nothing is perfect, and we are taking the steps that we can to do as much as we can with our resources that we have. I would like it to be a much higher minimum wage, but that's not what's on the table. That's not what we're being able to get at now. So this is where we are. It's not perfect. It's not going to be ideal for everyone, but it's going to be the biggest impact for the most people that are most in need.
So many business owners that we've interviewed have said this may just put me out of business.
Well,
it reduces my margin so much that
Yeah.
I just can't stay in business.
I think that is definitely a reality for some people, and that's never an easy thing to have to face. But what we're looking at is the most number of people that can do the most benefit. And to make progress, some things do go backwards a little bit sometimes, or sometimes not everyone has the same advantages that they had before the places were leveled a little bit. But I think that overall, folks are probably a bit scared to make the change. If they haven't made the change and they haven't made to see the difference of what paying employees a wage so that they're comfortable sleeping at night, so they know that they can make all their bills, if they do that, I feel like they would be able to see the impact that happens. Facing the raw numbers of it, there's a lot working against small businesses, but people deserve to make a wage to survive on, and if your business model doesn't allow for that, then you may need to relook at your business model.
The Department of Labor plays a pivotal role in all of this, setting guidelines for Delaware businesses. We met with Secretary Carol Hubbard to find out how minimum wage will be implemented and enforced.
The Department of Labor has primary responsibility for ensuring that individuals who are paid a stated wage get paid that wage. And so we do monitor and have a distinct record of the number of individuals in Delaware who are making a certain wage. And so, for example, with the increase in the minimum wage, that impacts about 100,000 Delawareans who were making minimum wage. And so, as those wages increase up to $15 in 2025, we'll be able to see the impact of the number of wage earners in those various categories. An increase in the minimum wage is certainly in line with our goals for Delawareans. What we do is to provide training and education and supports for those people who are trying to transition from a minimum wage job to a higher skilled job. We're all about upskilling, bringing people through the range so that, young people who come out of high school and may work a fast food job, they're not stuck there. We provide them with opportunities to get IT training, logistics training, additional college credits, additional vocational credits, so that they can move through the salary range. It's a salary range so that they can have a livable, sustainable wage for their families. Interestingly enough, throughout the pandemic, employers have been required to pay a little bit more to be competitive because individuals, have more choices. As the incidence of illness increased, we had a number of, sort of leveling up in a way in terms of work. But, one of our focuses here at the Department of Labor is to address the needs of women of color and other minorities who've traditionally been at the lower range. Our goals are to open up opportunities for women in general, women of color, and other minorities. By increasing wages for women, it obviously increases the family's ability to to have a livable, a stable wage. Well, certainly the living wage is the gold standard. Anybody who works full-time should not be making less than a livable wage.
President Biden has proposed nearly doubling the national minimum wage from its current rate of $7.25 an hour to $15 an hour as part of his $1.9 trillion stimulus plan. Delaware is the 11th state to reach the $15 an hour mark. National organizations, such as the Poor People's Campaign, are fighting for increases at the state and federal levels. They are calling for raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour immediately and continue increasing the minimum wage on a regular basis, arguing that labor costs, like any business expense such as energy or materials, should be expected to rise with the cost of living. Our poverty rate in the state of Delaware is pretty high. I think we're currently at 13.4%, give or take, and we're higher than New Jersey. We're higher than Maryland, but we're not as high as Pennsylvania, and I think that has a lot to do with census in the state, right? So finding any way that we can to help alleviate these numbers and bring them back up to speed, our balance, I think, is very, very important. Very, very important. So what would you tell the families right now that are expecting this? What good news can you, or hope can you give them?
Poverty rate in Delaware is extremely high. I believe it's 13%. And, this is something that will help those families, those individuals that are currently in that threshold. Basically, this disproportionately affects women of color in particular. And that's one of the reasons why this legislation is so important, to boost those earnings, especially for our city of Wilmington people. But it does, our Latino population, it affects them disproportionately more than any other population in the state. So hopefully this will help lift those families out of poverty moving forward. And again, in 2025, it'll be $15. We'll probably be back here again in 2025 because $15 in 2025 probably won't be enough at that time in 2025.
Will it make it to 2023? Will it be enough then?
Will it be enough then? I can't answer that question. It will be a help. It'll be a help because it goes to, I believe it's $13.50 or $13.25 in 2023. So like I said, it steps up from $9.25 now. Our neighboring state here, Pennsylvania, is $7.25. So hopefully that'll also help in job recruitment and retainment also, because we'll probably get some people, some overflow from Pennsylvania coming here to Delaware to work. Our neighboring states, New Jersey has already done this. They've enacted their $15 minimum wage. Theirs goes to $15 in 2024, and Maryland's goes to $15 in 2025, as does New York. So, for us not to do this would definitely hurt our employers more, because these employees would just go to other states to find employment at that higher rate of pay.
The battle over minimum wage in Delaware is over for now. Food for thought. Employers, do we stop worrying about our employees once they clock out? Or do we go beyond that? Thank you for watching The Agenda.